Hello, soon to be debt-free people. Today I'm going to tell you what I went through. It's 2:47 a.m. and I'm lying on the couch because I can't sleep in my bed. Not with that tightness in my chest. I've got 3 unopened envelopes on the coffee table, all stamped, urgent. There's a half-eaten bag of chips beside them, and the glow of my phone screen keeps flashing from yet another payment reminder. I mute it. I already know what it says. That familiar chill, the one that crawls up your neck when you know you've messed something up again, hits me like clockwork. That's when I realize I have no idea how deep this goes. I just know it's bad. And guess what? You probably won't survive this if you keep ignoring the numbers like I did. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, post your location and local time in the comments. Let's see who else is awake, pacing the floor, and wondering how to make rent. Now listen carefully to each word of the following sentence, because it will help you get out of debt immediately. I was making one of the top mistakes in debt management, and I didn't even know it. I was hiding from the numbers. Not just forgetting a bill here and there, actively refusing to calculate my total debt. I'd tell myself I had around $12 in debt. But when I finally totaled it up across all cards, loans, and that one sketchy buy now pay later app I regret more than my 2009 bangs, the real number was over $28. It wasn't just bad math, it was fear. I used to say things like, I'm better off not knowing, as if avoiding the truth somehow protected me from it. Like it wasn't happening unless I stared it in the face. But debt doesn't need your permission to exist. It multiplies whether you acknowledge it or not. There's a mainstream historical fact I think about often. In ancient Rome, debt was taken so seriously that if you defaulted, your creditors could literally enslave you. Harsh, I know, but sometimes I think emotional enslavement isn't all that different. I felt chained to my own avoidance. You see, once I tallied it all up, everything, I had my full panic moment. I wanted to scream, or move to a remote island where currency didn't exist and people traded in coconuts and warm hugs. But that breakdown, it was also the breakthrough. Because you can't fix what you won't face. Here's how I finally pulled off the band-aid. I made a big, ugly spreadsheet. No color coding, no filters, just me, Google Sheets, and an iced coffee I regretted buying midway through. I listed every account, every balance, every interest rate, yes, including the store credit card I swore I'd only use for emergencies. I added minimum payments and due dates. That's when I realized half of my late fees were because I kept forgetting things, not because I didn't have any money. When the grand total hit me, $28,411.77, I didn't cry. I didn't rage, I just stared at it. And then, weirdly, I felt better. Like naming the monster under the bed makes it less powerful. There's still an open debate in behavioral finance about whether transparency helps or hurts people in financial distress. Some experts say it triggers shame. Others say it provides structure. For me, it did both, and that tension is exactly what helped me move. You can't make good decisions with bad data. You need the truth, especially the ugly kind. Now, I'll give you a quirky little tidbit. In Japan, there's a cultural concept called matai-nai, which means a sense of regret over waste. It applies not just to trash, but to time, money, even potential. I realized I was wasting potential by not knowing my actual numbers. And trust me, wasted potential haunts you longer than interest fees. So if you're listening right now and haven't faced your numbers yet, do this. Set a timer. 20 minutes. That's it. You're not making a plan yet, you're just looking. Treat it like checking the weather before going outside. Not emotionally charged, just data. Because the longer you delay, the deeper the spiral gets. And here's the weirdest part. Once I saw it all, I started sleeping better, not because my debt went away overnight, but because my brain finally stopped guessing in the dark. Turns out, fear hates light. I started keeping my full debt total taped to the fridge. Not as punishment, but as orientation. A map only works if you know where you're starting from. So, that's mistake number 1. Hiding from the numbers. Avoid it, and everything else gets easier. Let's rewind to one of the most ironic days of my life. I had just printed out what I believed was the perfect budget. It was minimalist, clean, color-coded like a Pinterest dream. I even titled it, Financial Rebirth, in a dramatic serif font. And it crashed harder than my attempt at homemade sourdough. Because I made mistake number 2, unrealistic budgeting. You'd think that after finally facing the numbers, I'd show myself some grace. But no, I went from debt denier to budget drill sergeant overnight. My first plan had me living on beans, canceling every subscription, including Spotify, which made doing dishes unbearable, and assigning myself a $0 fun allowance. That's right, I punished myself with silence and sadness. It lasted 11 days. On day 12, I rage-ordered Thai food, cried into the curry, and swore off budgeting entirely. Turns out, most people mess this up too. We try to fix years of behavior in 1 week. We budget for a robot version of ourselves who eats rice cakes, walks 3 miles to save gas, and only drinks tap water with lemon peels. Not a human with cravings, emotions, and a best friend who always wants to grab drinks real quick. Real humans need realistic budgets. So, I went back to the drawing board. But this time, I didn't aim for ideal, I aimed for honest. Here's what changed. I gave myself a fun category. It wasn't big, but it was guilt-free. A little joy goes a long way toward sticking with a plan. I kept groceries real. I don't cook like a homesteader. I meal prepped once and ended up eating 4-day-old mush. So now, I budget for the frozen stuff I'll actually eat. I stopped pretending car maintenance doesn't exist. Because nothing torpedoes a budget like an unexpected oil change and 4 new tires you didn't see coming. You'd think the idea of realistic budgets is obvious. But let me remind you of a mainstream historical fact. In 1694, England created its first official budget under William III, and it was almost entirely guesswork. Parliament had no firm tax data. They made rough projections, hoped the math worked out, and prayed for no wars. That's basically what most of us did first. 2. Except our war is with impulse spending. The fringe side of budgeting is fascinating too. Did you know there's a whole movement called anti-budgeting? People just automate savings and bills, and spend the rest however they like. No categories, no spreadsheets, just vibes. Financial experts are still debating whether this helps people stay consistent, or just hides undisciplined spending behind automation. Personally, I love a hybrid. I still like structure, but now I bake in humanity. I renamed my categories. Fun became spark. Groceries became real food. Even emergency fund became number fund. Language matters, because when I open my budget now, it doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like preparation. The difference between restriction and rhythm is everything. An unrealistic budget feels like a crash diet. A realistic one feels like learning to eat better most of the time. And don't let anyone shame your comfort items. You want a $6 fancy coffee twice a week? Budget for it. Better to plan small joys than binge on big regrets. I once heard someone say, if your budget only works when everything goes right, it's not a budget, it's a fantasy. And that stung, because mine was absolutely a fantasy. Now, I budget for the weeks when I get sick and order takeout. I budget for birthday months. I even budget for burnout. You might be tempted to cut everything fast. That scorched earth vibe hits hard when you're fired up. But remember this. You're not fixing your debt in a weekend. You're building habits that last for years. Would you rather crush it for 14 days, Then give up, or coast consistently for 14 months? I chose consistency. I still mess up. Last month, I forgot to factor in a friend's baby shower and ended up Venmoing $80 I didn't have. But now, instead of spiraling, I adjust. Budgets are living documents, not contracts written in blood. The moment I gave myself room to be human, room to adapt, shift, learn, I started sticking to my plan. So if you're listening right now, sitting with a budget that looks perfect on paper but feels like a straitjacket in real life, loosen it, rewrite it, be kind to yourself. Debt management isn't about punishment, it's about possibility. And your budget? That's the blueprint for your new life. Make it livable. Let me take you to a particularly awkward Wednesday night. I'm sitting on the floor, surrounded by bills, budget printouts, and an empty LaCroix can I crushed in a mild panic. Why? Because I just realized something. I had no idea how much progress I'd made, or hadn't made, since starting my debt plan. That's mistake number 3, not tracking your progress. Now here's the fun twist. I thought I was tracking. I had a budget. I had auto payments. I had a folder labeled Financial Freedom. What I didn't have was visibility. I couldn't answer a very basic question. How much debt have you paid off this month? I stared at that question like it was written in Latin. There's this myth that once you build the plan, everything else just flows. Like money starts cooperating out of respect for your effort. Spoiler. It doesn't. What actually happens is, you lose motivation if you can't see how far you've come. We humans are weird that way. We can suffer through long processes if we feel momentum. But if it just feels like shoveling snow in a blizzard, you'll quit. The ancients understood this. The Great Wall of China wasn't just built for defense, it was built to show progress. Even incomplete sections were displayed to raise morale. Visualizing progress isn't a modern hack, it's biological. So I created a new ritual. Every Friday, I sit down with my budget and color in a little thermometer chart I made. It's cheesy. It looks like something a second-grade fundraiser would use. But you know what? It works. Because I see the bar rise. I see debt melt. And that does something to my nervous system that spreadsheets never could. Even better, I added a celebration column. Every $500 paid off equals one intentional joy. A book, a dinner, a nap with zero guilt. Yes, naps count. Now, let me confess something nerdy. I once spent 2 hours building a progress dashboard in Notion. I called it Debt Quest. It had colors, trackers, quotes, even a pixel art dragon that leveled up when I hit milestones. Was it overkill? Yes. But for 2 months, it kept me focused. That's the point. Track in whatever way motivates you. Financial experts are still debating whether gamifying personal finance helps or distracts. Some say it cheapens the process. Others argue it taps into deep psychology. Me? I say if drawing stars on your planner helps you pay off MasterCard faster, draw the stars. Here's a quirky truth I learned while obsessing over tracking methods in ancient Mesopotamia. One of the first uses of writing was literally to track debts on clay tablets. They even had debt amnesty festivals, where some records were ceremonially wiped clean. I want one of those. Please. Anyway, back to my own mess. Before I tracked, I always felt like I was failing. Every bill payment felt like a drop in the ocean. But once I saw my balances fall, even a little, I gained momentum. I felt agency. You know that feeling when you start going to the gym and 3 weeks in, you catch a slightly more defined shoulder in the mirror? That, for your wallet, I now use 4 simple trackers. Total debt balance, updated monthly. With the date and emotion tagged, proud, frustrated, fine, I guess. Payments made. I list every payment, even the $22 ones. It adds up and reminds me that movement matters. Emergency fund growth, because this is the flip side of debt, safety. Watching it grow makes me feel powerful. Emotional check-ins. Once a month. I write how I feel about money. Angry? Hopeful? This helps me spot patterns I'd otherwise ignore. You don't need to go that deep. Even a sticky note on your mirror saying, $900 paid off, can change your day. There's also the psychological bonus. Tracking makes slip-ups feel temporary. I once overspent by $300 in a month. Before, that would have triggered a shame spiral. Now, I just see it as a data point. Course correction, not character flaw. So if you've been feeling like your plan isn't working, ask yourself, am I actually measuring it? If not, start today. Print a chart, use an app, grab crayons, write it on your fridge. Just find some way to tell your brain, you're making progress. Because when you can see the road behind you, the road ahead doesn't feel so impossible. You ever notice how managing money sometimes feels less like arithmetic and more like emotional archaeology? That's because beneath every missed payment, every impulse purchase, every ignored bill, there's a feeling. And I don't mean a simple, oops. I'm talking about whole waves of buried emotion. Guilt, shame, fear, even a little defiance. That's the hidden engine behind most debt mistakes, and it nearly wrecked me. After I stopped hiding from my debt and built a more realistic budget, you'd think I'd be sailing smooth. But no, I was still making dumb decisions. Not because I didn't know better, but because I didn't understand why I kept sabotaging myself. Let me paint the picture. It's Thursday night. I've had a long day. My boss made a snarky comment. My dinner burned, and suddenly, I'm at my laptop ordering $87 worth of candles and novelty socks. Because I deserve it. Sound familiar? That was me getting emotionally hijacked. We think debt is about money. It's about psychology. There's a well-known mainstream fact in behavioral economics. Humans are loss-averse. We fear losing money more than we enjoy gaining it. But here's what no one told me. Shame is also a loss. The loss of dignity, of confidence, of control, and that shame can fuel some pretty irrational decisions. It's like this. You mess up once, feel terrible, and instead of fixing it, you say, whatever, I'm already failing, and you spiral. That's the debt shame cycle. And I lived in it for years. The fringe side of this? There's actually a term called financial trauma, and it's gaining traction. Some therapists are now specializing in money wounds. Financial experts are still debating whether this should be its own diagnostic category. But I'll tell you, some of us are out here crying over $19 overdraft fees like it's a breakup. So what did I do about it? I started noticing when I made bad choices, not just what they were. Impulse purchases? Almost always at night, alone, tired. Skipping a payment? Usually when I felt hopeless or overwhelmed. Avoiding my budget? When I was ashamed of how the previous week went. This pattern tracking changed everything. Because once I saw the triggers, I could start intervening. Instead of ordering junk online, I'd journal, or call a friend, or, sometimes I'd clean the kitchen like a budget gremlin, but hey. Whatever works. I also started talking to myself differently. Not the, you're a failure, inner monologue. The, hey, you're learning, kind. That's when I introduced what I now call emotional buffers in my budget. These are little lines of defense. I created a mood money fund, $25 a month to spend when I'm feeling fragile. So I don't torch the whole plan on one bad day. I set up pause days. If I feel the urge to make a non-essential purchase, I wait 48 hours. 9 times out of 10, I forget it even existed. I use money affirmations. Yes. Seriously. I recorded my own voice saying things like, debt is a situation. Not an identity. Cringe? Maybe. But it works. One historical fact I cling to. During the Great Depression, many people felt personal failure for systemic collapse. Banks failed, but people blamed themselves. The same thing happens now on a micro level. When the system is stacked, we still take it personally. So if you're listening and feeling emotionally fried from your debt, that's not weakness. That's biology. And it doesn't mean you can't climb out. Here's my challenge to you. Do an emotional audit. Spend a few minutes this week writing down what financial decisions you regret, what you were feeling right before you made them, what you needed at that moment, validation, escape, control, and how you might meet that need in a healthier way next time. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. Because when you stop seeing your debt as a moral failure and start seeing it as a problem to solve, everything shifts. I once heard someone say, self-compassion is the fuel of discipline. I used to think discipline meant punishment. Now I know it means alignment. Debt isn't just about numbers. It's about nervous systems. If you want to stay on track, you've got to calm the part of your brain that's in panic mode. And that starts with understanding your emotional landscape. You can't out-budget a meltdown, but you can build a system that anticipates it. So here we are. Full circle. I've faced the numbers, built a livable budget, tracked my wins, navigated the emotional landmines, but there was still one sneaky mistake left, the kind that looks like strength but quietly drains your progress. Trying to do it all alone. I don't mean asking friends to pay your bills. I mean carrying the full emotional and logistical weight of your financial life in secret. I wore my independence like a badge. I got this, I'd say, while quietly Googling, how long before debt collectors take your plants? Here's the thing. I didn't got this. I was drowning, and the more I isolated myself, the deeper I sank. There's a historical truth I wish I'd known earlier. In medieval Europe, many village economies were built on community-based lending circles. Debt wasn't shameful, it was managed communally. People talked about money, helped each other. There were even debt forgiveness rituals built into certain religious calendars. Meanwhile, here I was, pretending everything was fine while silently rationing rice. Why do we do that? Probably because our culture ties worth to wealth. And when you're struggling, it feels like a character flaw. But listen, debt doesn't mean you're lazy, dumb, or irresponsible. Sometimes it just means life happened. It took me breaking down, again, for me to finally say something. I told a friend over coffee. I expected judgment. Instead, she offered her spreadsheet. Turns out, she'd paid off $50,000 in student loans and had systems. She showed me how she built her calendar, her automation tools, even her frustration snacks fund. Yes, that's real. That conversation saved me months of trial and error. So I started opening up more. I joined a Reddit forum about budgeting, then a Facebook group. I even followed a few finance creators who were open about their setbacks, not just their "look at my perfect life" reels. Soon, I had a whole mental toolkit built from strangers on the internet. Financial experts are still debating whether peer support actually improves debt outcomes. But I'm telling you, it improves you. It makes you feel less broken, less alone, and that's half the battle. Now, I get it, not everyone wants to share their finances over brunch. But there are layers. Start by reading others' stories. Then post anonymously if you want. Maybe DM a creator who seems trustworthy. Eventually, bring in a real-life friend or mentor. What matters is you stop carrying it alone. And if you can swing it, get professional help. I used to think financial advisors were only for the rich. But guess what? Some nonprofit credit counseling agencies offer free or low-cost help. I finally booked a session, and they found $150 per month I was wasting without cutting anything fun. It was like watching magic. The counselor also helped me reframe debt repayment as a timeline, not a test. It wasn't, "Did you win or fail?" It was, "Are you still going?" One quirky tidbit I love. There's a Swedish word, lagom, which means just the right amount. Not too much, not too little. That's how I now think of help. Ask for just enough to lighten the load, not surrender it. You're still the driver, But every good driver checks their mirrors and listens to the GPS once in a while. Before I wrap, let me give you this. If you're in debt and feeling ashamed, isolated, or overwhelmed, it's not because you're weak. It's because you're human. And humans aren't wired to survive hard things in silence. So build your team. Tell your story. Ask for help, even if your voice shakes. And one day, you'll look back at this chapter, not as your lowest point, but as the moment everything quietly started to change. Now let's slow it down. You're still here. That matters. Maybe your eyes are tired. Maybe your chest is lighter. Maybe your brain's still spinning with numbers and plans. That's okay. Let it settle. Take a breath. This isn't a sprint. It's not a test. It's a path. And you're walking it now. The world outside might still look the same. Your inbox full of reminders. Your kitchen table still holding those bills. But something inside you shifted tonight. You chose to listen. You chose to face it. That's not small. That's powerful. Picture yourself 6 months from now. Not in a mansion. Not driving a yacht. Just calm. Balanced. Breathing without tightness. Smiling at your bank app instead of wincing. That's not a dream, it's a direction. And if tomorrow isn't perfect, that's allowed. Perfection isn't the goal. Consistency is. You are not your balance. You are not your credit score. You are not your past choices. You are the person who showed up today. And that is worth more than numbers can hold. So rest, hydrate, text that friend, light that candle. Yes, the one you bought on impulse. Forgive yourself. Plan softly. Begin again tomorrow, or the day after. This story is still unfolding. And you're writing it now.